The night before the wheel on my suitcase broke, I had a dream where the wheel on my suitcase broke. I woke up sweating and walked over to my mother's room. She had been sitting up in her bed, and the other half was cold and empty. I got in the blankets without saying anything and spent the rest of the night thinking about bad omens. We moved to America when I was 12. My grandmother told me to stay still. She traced the sand around my shoe with her finger, then I lifted my foot, and she gathered the shoe print and kept it in a jar. This was to ensure that I'd come back, though it's already been 10 years and I haven't seen her since. I was very lonely in those days. I used to spend hours playing with the rotary phone, spinning my finger around, making the trip from 0 to 1 and then back. I forged an American accent by watching the TV and mimicking the movements of actors' mouths. I saw fast food advertisements and Thanksgiving parades. A halo lingers around the screen even when you turn it off. In search of better opportunities, and because life is funny sometimes, we headed straight to Texas. I went through life feeling like a spy. I couldn't speak in class because I was afraid my voice would give me away. I started dreaming in English. I'd come home from school and spend several minutes cooling my head in the freezer. It took me months to master the national anthem, and it still left a bad taste in my mouth. But my mother was always waiting for me with a plate of cut fruit. Her love was a tall glass of water on the nightstand. I never had to ask. I liked the blinds in my room. I could see without being seen. That's how I heard snow for the first time. The ice tapped on my window and invited me outside. The first thing I did was get on the ground and dig my knees into it. I probably drew something in it, but I don't remember what. Then I gathered my shoe print in my hands and held it close. It was my way of telling the snow that I wanted it to come back again.
I was there. I was about 25 then. It was Christmas Mass. He sat at the very last pew and spent the whole service studying his lap. My mother told me to face forward and sit up straight. I had a habit of staring back then. Later that night, there was a party at Giara's house. Before long, I spotted him in the crowd. His coat was in his hands. He must have been too nervous to ask for a hanger. Memory is a strange thing. I remember every little thing about that coat. But I can't for the life of me recall a single thing Kiara told me that night. It was checkered brown, with 3 shiny black buttons. It was a bit too large around the shoulders. Kiara must have said something about heading to the kitchen, because by the time I turned back to her, she was gone. The room smelled like cigars and panettone. It's hard to remember what compelled me to do what I did next. I ducked under the mistletoe, around the tables, through the kissing couples. Then, there he was. At some point someone had put a string of tinsel around his neck. I thought, please say something. He did. He said, "Would you like a cigarette?" Yes. Yes, I would. I followed him out into the garden, where the crickets were harmonizing. The pathway, the grass, our feet were glowing. It had begun to snow. I felt elated watching my breath fog up in front of me. Back inside, it seemed that the festivities had begun to get out of hand. A door opened for a second, and the sound of drunken Christmas carols filtered through. I felt tied, as though with some invisible string, to everything around me at that moment. The lamps coloring the cobblestones yellow, the shiny buttons on his coat, the distant sounds of my friends, singing and laughing. Everything I'd ever known, it seemed, was in that house. That was the real miracle.